Hello and welcome to The Art of Listening, a podcast about classical music, conducting, composition, the business of music, and how to listen to it all. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and with me, as always, is Gabriel Gordon. Gabe, how are you today? Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I am so looking forward to this topic. Today, we're going to be talking all about what it takes to be a gigging musician. If you're a member of a string quartet, orchestra, any type of ensemble, and you're looking to go at this as a business person, not just an amateur musician, this is the show for you guys. Gabe, You and I both have a little bit of experience of being a gigging musician. Talk to us a little bit about when you first decided to create an ensemble that might grow some legs and start making some money.
You know, there were several times in my career that I've done this in different states. And every single time I learned a whole lot because it really takes a whole lot more than, just getting, some of your friends together and, starting to play gigs. There's a whole lot more to it, isn't there?
There certainly is, and that's why we are here for you guys today. Of course, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, check out all the archives over at the artoflisteningpodcast.com, and all of our stuff is located on Gabe's website, gabrielgordon.com. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below. We would love to have you guys a part of our Art of Listening community. And Gabe, when it comes to being a musician, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I remember being back in college. It was just a bunch of us. We decided to start playing some Mozart quartets. And next thing you know, I got a phone call. And it was because a business called our teacher and said, "Do you have a quartet?" And she said, "Sure.
Right.
Call Jeff." And I got a phone call and they said, do you have a quartet? And I said, "Sure I do."
Right.
And next thing you know, I was an entrepreneur. Like right then and there, I had no business being in business, but sometimes you just have to go, yes, I'll do this for you. What was your first experience similar to that, or did you have a little bit of a different start?
I had a little bit of a different start. Really, the first weddings I played, I guess I was in my late teenage years, and they were set up by other people. And all I knew was the time and the place to show up. And at the time, there was music that I was unfamiliar with. That they just said, "Okay, turn to page 22." And I looked at this and I was like, "Okay." And I said, "All right, what's the tempo?" Because I'd never even seen this music before. And the person who had put the whole thing together said, "Okay, 1, 2, 3," and then we just played. And, it was just really a lot of fun sight reading, some music. What I didn't realize is that just about every single piece that I was playing there, I was going to play about 5,000 more times.
Yeah, I remember being in that similar situation. I remember being in a quartet, and I asked that, "What is the tempo of this piece?" And their response was, "Look at her feet."
Right.
And however quickly she walks down the aisle, that's how quickly you play the piece. And I'm like, hey, that was probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever known. And again, today we're going to be talking about our 5 best pieces of advice for any gigging musician. And Gabe, today we're going to be talking about our first 3 of them. I call it the 3 M's: musicians, music, and marketing. So let's just dive in here with musicians, Gabe. When it comes to finding musicians, and let's just call it string quartet, but of course this could be a brass quartet, quintet, anything like that. But we're going to just use the term string quartet throughout the show here. What do we need to have in order to put together a great gigging string quartet?
Well, the first thing that you need, because all of these dates that people, come in with, not everybody in your, in your one little group is going to be able to do it. You may not be able to do every single one. So you need a list. That's the first thing that you need, is a list of really good musicians who can come up on a moment's notice. Sometimes you'll get the phone call and say, we've got the gig tomorrow. And so you need to be ready to get a whole bunch of people. So have have your quartet, but also have at least 4, maybe even 8 more people at your disposal.
That is so true. How many times have you gotten the phone call of, we have a wedding. Our first quartet has decided that they're no longer available or something has happened. Are you free tomorrow? And you never know. And you might get 3 out of your 4 core people saying yes. And then that one's like, yeah, I've already got a family event. You do need to have that core group that knows what they're doing, how to make it work. And then you always have that 1 or 2 people there. I've even been in gigs where you're the only one out of the core and you've got 3 other substitutes that you're trying to work on. You're now doing quartet B, or some of our cases together, quartet C or D.
Right.
But having those musicians in mind, what's your concept here on relationships? Do you have to be friends? This is a business here, or do you just have to be able to, work together professionally for the next couple hours?
Yeah, you don't have to be friends. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to know the person in some cases. I walked into gigs. I've walked into gigs where I literally shook hands with the people, sat down, and started playing. 5 minutes later.
And that's because, let's face it, we're going to call this gigging music, right? Like, you would never do that to a Beethoven quartet, right? And perform it live on, some big stage or something like that. But, Pachelbel's canon is kind of Pachelbel's canon.
Exactly. And while it's not easy to do these things, what, a lot of people may not understand is that it's all of your previous training that's going into these moments. The fact that you can catch anybody's tempo, right away. The fact that you can recognize that, somebody wants to take this a little bit faster, or, do something else with it. The fact that you're paying attention and, you understand the cellist is in charge, can see how many people are in the wedding party and say, oh, we need to do this piece again and keep on going. Yes, or
it's looking across at your colleagues and the eyes bug out and you're like, you've got 3 more measures and they have 50 more yards to walk.
Right. Exactly.
Like, all right, here we go. Right. And we'll talk about music in a second and how to do all those things. But again, when we're looking at musicians, it's also the travel considerations. Current standards of health considerations apply, but do you travel together? Do you take one car? Does everybody meet at the same spot? I mean, these are things that we want to think about. Right. And again, I've had situations where you go to a stranger's house, everybody gets into the car and you're off with a bunch of music and a cello in the back. Dress code, right? You guys need to come up with, what is the dress code? It could be tuxedos. In fact, I would say it's mostly going to be tuxedos. But you know what? You should also agree on what business casual is. Is it khakis and a white shirt? Is it just a suit? There's a lot of different things that are in there when it comes to dress code. And also, I always look for musicians that want to help promote. Now, we're going to talk about marketing in a little bit here, but I still have my hat from the quartet that we both did together. And it's just nice to walk around. Even, my son likes to wear the hat just because he likes hats. And even now we still get people asking about the quartet. Now, my question to you here, and I've never needed to worry about this, but as a violinist, how do you flip a coin and determine who's first and second?
You know what? It's funny because I have never had a question like that. I would walk into the gig and I would just sit down in the chair that's unoccupied, basically.
Fair point. Yes.
and but as the guest, as the person that didn't put the quartet together, I never assume. That's something else. That's part of being a professional and understanding that you don't want to make assumptions on a gig, and you just if there's no way to determine if you're first or second, just assume you're going to be second and have the person in charge say, no, you're going to play first today. Okay, fine.
Is that different? I mean, because you have to learn twice the amount of music. I know most of the time we're sight reading and stuff like that. I mean, you have to know both parts.
Yeah, actually it can be a challenge sometimes if for whatever reason I've been playing the first violin part on certain things for a while. Well, because we've played these pieces so many times, I actually kind of look at it as a pleasant challenge to sit down at the second violin part and say, oh, well, I can focus a little bit harder now.
Now, what happens if you are a guest and you sit down in that second violin chair and you realize that you're the stronger of the two, or maybe the first violinist, just because of natural personality, isn't the leader of the group? I'm sure you've been in situations where you realize that, okay, someone's got to take the ball here, even though I'm new. Someone's got to run with this thing.
It's true.
Is there a first violin versus second violin mentality?
Well, generally, the first violin starts the group, but it doesn't have to be. This is true in professional string quartets who are playing concerts. It doesn't always have to be the first violinist that starts stuff. Pachelbel canon doesn't start with the violins, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And if the first violinist is having trouble, really what you want to do as professionals is make sure you're putting out the best product there, and hopefully the person who's having issues there will understand that and allow somebody else to start the piece.
So in wrapping up this section here, Gabe, I think when we're looking at musicians, we need to have people that we can work with, whether they're strangers or friends. And I think it's also safe to say we all need to understand that we're here for a business reason. We're not going to this person's wedding to just have fun. We are there to do a job. Someone's paying you. Make this thing happen. Make it look as professional as possible. And that comes down to our second thing. Gabe, what's that second thing that we need to? What's that second M word?
That second M word is getting the music together. Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's so much involved there, right? Like it's not as easy as just, hey, we're going to sit down and play. You need a quartet librarian, don't you?
Yeah. And very often it's you, especially when you're putting stuff together. Probably the most famous thing about putting quartets together is the String Quartet Wedding Book. And putting together your book and making sure it's organized, because you don't want to be like flipping pages while the bride is waiting there for everybody else.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because you and I have had our fair share of librarians jobs, both for string quartets and for ensembles here. Right. I've noticed that everybody has their own system. Like, is it done by piece? Is it done by genre? Is it done by, the 10 most popular pieces are in the front, and then we have a table of contents. As a new musician, what's your preference? Like, you're going to look at this book and it might be pretty darn thick. What do you look for when you're putting your books and stuff together?
I like to put all of the most common stuff, your trumpet voluntaries, your Pachelbel canons, Handel's Water music, all of that stuff that you will probably play the vast majority of processionals. You put it in your processional section so that it's really, really easy to find. You do it in alphabetical order, so it's really easy to find. Then
alphabetical by title?
By title. You could do it by title. You could do it by composer or order. There, several ways of doing it, but you're right.
Pachelbel's canon, by the way, is not under P. It's under
No. Right. Exactly.
Right.
That's the thing. You could call it canon in D, and that's under C. There are lots of different ways of doing it. Then you kind of want to put it, the way I like to do it is put it in ceremony order. So you have your processionals, you have your music that's, in the middle of a ceremony, of any kind of ceremony, and then your recessionals. You could have your prelude music, generally, lot of people want music, people as they come in. You would put that before the processionals. There are lots of different ways of doing it. You could put everything in composer order, but a lot of people like to put tabs on their books so that you can just flip go to the red section, boom. Go to number 5, boom.
Do you prefer regular sheets of paper, or do you prefer every sheet is in a big, huge plastic sheet protector and there's like 100 of those in the book?
A lot of people like, each one in its own protector that way. The problem with that, of course, is that makes issues for page turns. And somebody has to drop out in order to do a page turn. But really, these days, a lot of people like to use iPads and foot pedals.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I've played some gigs where the organization that actually hired you provides you with 4 tablets that that you can access, and you can use the foot pedals in order to do it.
I mean, and how does that work? If your iPad's only 10 inches, are you seeing the entire thing? Is it able to follow you? Are you needing glasses just so you can see the 30-second runs? What is that?
In some cases, that's what I've experienced, where I just had like this little tablet, and it kind of once you become indoctrinated, into the whole thing, you kind of learn how the whole system works, but it takes a second to figure out. But once you've done your 3rd or 4th gig with that organization, then you figure out how it all works.
Now, what's your philosophy on backups? I mean, I know usually when we were putting together our quartet, we had like 2 or 3 full sets, and we're talking like a couple hundred pages per notebook, and we had multiple sets of those notebooks because we might have had 2 or 3 quartets at different weddings at the same time. We've even had days where like people were switching in and out of different weddings depending on locations.
Right.
I would think that if you have an iPad with music, I would still want to have a paper copy, at least in the car, just in case.
And just in case, I think that's absolutely, and a whole bag of batteries.
A whole bag of batteries, right? Because as soon as you're doing that, you're dealing with everything else. I mean, I couldn't imagine going out and saying, okay, now you're at a beach and you are doing this on the sand and you've got a foot pedal. There's so many things in here, but let's just kind of talk a little bit about gigging musicians and the types of music. We've already talked about weddings, right? You need your pre-wedding, your ceremony, and there's a variety of religious and non-religious pieces of music in there, your post, and then there's your reception. I'm going to stop here before we hit the other words. Gabe, should a quartet have the chicken dance ready?
Yes.
Answer is yes. Okay. Yeah. On top of that, we have I have it down here as quartet standards, right? Like, what would you consider a string quartet standard?
Well, some of the other stuff that I've already mentioned, Pachelbel's canon and all of that stuff. But yeah, you should have pop tunes.
Yeah, pop tunes
at the ready. A lot of people who want weddings now love like Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. They love Beatles tunes.
Freebird.
I'm sorry.
You got a lot of the drunk people coming up in the middle asking for Freebird.
Absolutely, and Freebird is definitely one that you want. It takes up a whole 20 minutes. It's awesome.
Yes. And you need to have the sign by the cellist that says "No Stairway to Heaven." So you just
right
all that.
Yeah, and actually having musicians who know how to improvise are
not easy.
It's not easy to do, but it's extremely useful because you can just keep going on a certain bass line and have everybody just playing the same stuff and have one person just going off for a while on Freebird. It's awesome.
We're going to have all of this information over on the website, gabrielgordon.net. And you can, of course, check out all the stuff over here. Just do a search for wedding music. We're going to make sure that we get that stuff up so that way you guys have a great opportunity to find exactly what you need. Now, the other question here is music selections, because that someone's going to call you and say, hey, do you have and they're going to ramble off something that you know is not in the book. And you've got the opportunity to say, yes, I can do this for you, or no, you can't. Have you been in that situation where you're like, they want the YMCA and we're a string quartet?
No, I mean, you got to be able to find stuff. And it's also very useful to have a skill at arranging, and to be able to take a recording and being able to just write stuff down, or take a lead sheet and turn that into a string quartet.
Well, where do you find this stuff, right? Because I know in the quartets that we've had, many of our players, myself included at the time, were gigging K-12 orchestra directors. So we had a lot of this stuff already in our schools' libraries and stuff like that. Right. Where would you say is a good place to start a music library of gigging type of selections? There are several resources. I mean, for all of the classical music stuff, the IMSLP is one of the first resources I go to. It's a free, it's called the Petrucci Library, and it's a free resource for anybody who can, go there, and has lots of PDFs of great music there. You can go to Sheet Music Plus and get some great arrangements there for fairly cheap. Whenever I've seen somebody's gig book, I've always asked, hey, could I take a picture of this? And they say, yeah, sure. You just, kind of get what you can, what's around you. And, as well, making your own arrangements means that, you can, have access to it whenever you want. It's wonderful. And of course, we're going to have a list of those different places over on our website, gabrielgordon.net. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like, and leave a comment if you've got some great places. We would love to hear from where you guys and where you have. So, Gabe, we've hit our first two, our musicians and our music, but there's one more M, and it's probably the most important if you're looking at being a business quartet. What is that third M?
That is marketing.
It is.
Yeah, and it's really... It's much more involved than you think, and there's so much to it, right, Jeff?
Now I remember getting that phone call, and it was the, hey, is this Jeff? Do you have a string quartet? Tell me about yourself. And I was on the phone, and in a heartbeat, I said, yes, it's the Westchester String Quartet. Because we're in Westchester University, and it was just okay, and this is how much we charge, and this is how much we do, and you're like, we charge $1,000 a concert, is that okay with you? And then you hear the pause. But when it comes to marketing, there's a lot of things, right? You have your string quartet name. You've been in a variety of quartets, some that you've created, some that you were worked in. What's your philosophy on string quartet names? It really depends on what you want to associate yourself with. I would say, like you said, the Westchester, String Quartet, centering yourself on just an area, in order to identify yourself that way. There's, you could make up something that just rolls off the tongue easily. One of the sillier names that I came up with when I was playing with a piano trio is the Tri-Borough Trio, because we were in 3 different boroughs. So you want to find something that people easily remember. That's probably the most important thing. Once somebody hears what your name is, they won't forget it. Right. And we started doing this before the advent of, really the internet.
Yeah.
We were both a member of a group called the Shrewsbury String Quartet, and it was named because the guy who put it together lived on Shrewsbury Street.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of clever. But nowadays, if you're going to be looking for a string quartet name, you really do need to go to GoDaddy and do
right.
some domain search, because you need to have GabrielGordonQuartet.com or something like that, right? Like, you need to make sure that you've got, your domain, your Twitter, your Facebook. I mean, you need to do all of that marketing stuff, and you need to come up with a logo. You need to come up with a logo that's catchy.
And it's a total brand makeover, really. You really want to make sure that you are standing for something, and like I said, are easily remembered.
Yes.
And having a visual along with the name, and having the visual having everything to do with the name, it just sticks in people's minds and literally goes viral. And that's exactly what you want.
So you have your name, you have your logo, something that's going to look nice on a shirt, something that's going to look nice on a hat, maybe on a business card, definitely on your Facebook. I always recommend, when I work with my business clients, you have 2 versions of your logo, one that's a square, one that's a rectangle lengthwise. So you have something for social plus something for the top of your website. And speaking of websites, you need a website, right? You need something that people can go to. You need it to make sure that it is there. We're not going to spend too much time on this today. That's certainly another podcast, but make sure that it's clean and clear. I'm not so sure right now if we need to have payment gateways on a website. I think we do. I don't ever want to have a situation where somebody can come to my website, book me, and I don't talk to them. So I think there's a difference between, there's a way to pay online and there's a payment gateway on your website. Like, I don't see a bride hiring a string quartet without ever speaking to somebody.
No, you definitely want to speak to them, and because in some cases this may not be a gig you necessarily want to take, and if they've already paid for it, then there's a whole lot of awkwardness there. You want to make sure that they have all kinds of options, including an online option to get yourself paid. But you don't want people to assume that they can just book you without talking to you.
I don't like the idea of a booking calendar. I do like the idea of a check my schedule, but even that can backfire, because if I look at your schedule, Gabe, and you're always free, something's wrong.
Exactly.
So there's got to be a happy medium for your group. I mean, again, some quartets are busy 2 to 3 times a weekend, and some quartets are busy 2 to 3 times a year.
Right.
And those are both options that are there. But you want to make sure that everything that you're doing is safe, easy to remember. You never want to hear, hey, Gabe, that quartet, what was that name? I remember that. You want to be able to say the Westchester String Quartet. You want to make sure that it's absolutely right there. Having those shirts, having those hats, all those good things. Gabe, you've been doing a lot of social media marketing for the stuff on your website and your YouTube channel. Talk to us a little bit about how you're marketing yourself as a gigging musician.
Well, you want to make sure you have a page dedicated to on your website to just those things. And I'm doing weddings, I'm also doing school concerts, I'm doing regular concerts, and you want to make sure that you have sections out for those, each one of those, because each person is going to go to your website and say, okay, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, and you don't want them going to the wrong spot. And as well, you want to make sure that in all of your social media, for your SEO, you're talking about these sorts of things, and connecting to various wedding resources, and making sure that you are following, say, all the local wedding venues, and making sure that you are commenting on things like that. And if you have a friend that does flowers for a wedding, connect with them and make sure that people who are looking for weddings are looking for you.
That is a really good point, right? Getting out in the community, which is sometimes hard if you're doing quartets around like a big city or someplace like that. But, you know, getting into those networking areas, I remember going to wedding shows and you're the person in the corner and your quartet's just going. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. But yeah, get onto the local flower websites and say, look, I'll put your information on mine. You put, you know, back and forth.
Yeah.
And that could go for Amazon too, right? You can create an Amazon store that if I come to your quartet site, it goes to Amazon, and that might be where you are selling bridal activities or you know, wedding things. That's an affiliate marketing right there. There's no reason why you shouldn't be getting into that. And also, you know, creating that affiliate marketing for things like wedding music and CDs and Listen Here and all of that stuff as we go through here. One thing that I was thinking about, what's your thoughts on, you know, performing for the brides ahead of time? I mean, obviously we're having a business contract. Obviously it's a big decision. What's your thoughts on inviting the bride to come to see you to play? Do we need, COVID aside, do we need that? You know, it's a lot of time to get a bunch of musicians together to basically be live performances. Should we be thinking of our quartets like a wedding cake tester?
Well, you know, sometimes, and what you want to do, there are several ways of doing this. Number one, they have these bridal shows, and you know, they're literal conventions where prospective brides and grooms will come and say, you know, they'll have lots of vendors there, and you can be one of the vendors where, you know, you're playing your string quartets, you're doing that, and they come and they see what you're doing right there. The other way to do it is to make sure that you are constantly documenting and recording all of the stuff that you're already doing. So filming yourself while you're doing a wedding and putting it up on all of your social media so that when somebody says, you know, hey, how do you guys sound? You just direct them to the video and say, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And so that gives them examples of, you know, what you sound like.
When somebody says, can you do something? Is the answer always yes? I'm saying this because I know, you know, you've been asked to be a solo musician, and they've asked for the canon, or they've asked for something that you're just sitting there going, it's just impossible.
Yeah, I would say the answer is always yes, but this is how it's going to work.
But you've come up with a solution for that, haven't you? Because people can find Gabriel Gordon by heading over to gabrielgordon.net and asking you to play at those gigs. How are you marketing yourself? What is that one special thing that you're doing these days while you're at your gigs?
Yeah, so what I've been able to come up with is the ability to play Pachelbel's canon by myself, to play Vivaldi's Spring by myself, because I have learned how to record myself over and over so that I have this accompaniment that comes with me, as well as a video of myself playing that over and over. So I can now provide a full orchestral accompaniment to everything that I'm doing. And you're just hiring one person instead of a full string quartet. You're getting a full string orchestra for less than the price of a string quartet. And so that's what I've been able to do. Anybody can do this. I can tell you that if I can learn how to do that, anybody can. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Gabriel Gordon, The Art of Listening, you'll be able to see quite a few examples of how I'm able to do that.
And of course, if you're interested in learning how to do that, reach out to Gabe over at gabrielgordon.net. He would love to be able to be out at your event or work with you guys to help you become a profitable gigging musician. Now, Gabe, we've talked about all the basic stuff, right? The things that we need, the musician stuff, the music stuff, and really the marketing. That stuff that we've known about. I want to take just a quick moment here to dive into the last two things. Business strategy, something that not every musician has, which is why I think every musician gets into being, you want to get paid for this. And
Right.
those are hard conversations. So let's just talk for a moment here about business strategy. It usually ends up being the person that has the idea for the string quartet, as you've already mentioned, turns into the business manager, the librarian, the booker, the everything, and the other three people just kind of show up. That's not always fair. So let's talk about this. Does the string quartet need somebody or somebody's that is the business side?
There are several ways of doing it. Our friend that you were talking about, the Shrewsbury String Quartet, he pretty much did everything. And what's sometimes hard for people to understand is all of the logistics that go into this. The first thing that you really need to do is create your own corporation, which generally is an LLC, a limited liability corporation, which enables you to be a sole proprietor. And you have to learn all of the legal stuff that goes along with that, and as well as have a separate bank account in order to be able to keep track of all of this.
Now, there's a lot of trust that comes involved. I'm thinking back to the Steve Jobs movie where he gets his first gig from Atari, and Atari says, I need a video game made. I'll give you $3,000. He tries it. He goes to Steve Wozniak. Woz says, how much are we getting? And he says, $700, and we're going to split it. And so how should a business like this work? Should I just trust that Gabe has brought in $1,000 and I'm going to get $250? Should I say, well, it's $1,000, but Gabe's doing all the work, he gets an extra 100, and then we split it? What is a good piece of advice for anybody who's trying to work on this? Because, on one hand, we're a quartet, we're friends. On the other hand, it is a business, and you're now running the business. I'm now working for you. There's a big difference there.
I think there's a huge difference there. I would say you need to be fair. You need to be fair to the other members of the group, whoever it is who's coming. You also need to be fair to yourself. It takes a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of legwork in order to get these gigs, in order to make these contacts, in order to do the social media, in order to set up the business as a business. That takes a lot of work. That's something that you should get paid for. And so the fee that you are charging the bride and groom or the organization or whatever it is that you're doing should include the contractor's fee. It should include the business fee, and you should pay yourself a little bit more for all that.
And what is that? Let's use round numbers. The gig is $1,000, 20% to be the librarian, businessman, accountant, all that stuff. That doesn't sound unreasonable because that's hours and hours of time.
Exactly.
And then, if you're doing the gig, then you split that evenly, right? Like I always say that, the gigging
Absolutely.
part should be split evenly. It's not that, that the viola doesn't get all the 16th note runs, so he gets less, right? Like everyone gets the same amount of stuff there.
Exactly. And 20% is pretty much the fair standard. And you always want to be honest and fair. And, people who, come to these gigs on a regular basis, they sense when you're being honest and fair. And so, take your 20% for your hard work and make no apologies for it. And then, yes, absolutely split the rest evenly because everybody's there and you're paying for everyone's time.
Now, the conversation, I would assume, is different for your regular quartet members versus your subs, right? Like if the four of us are in a quartet and you say, guys, who wants to do this? I'll take the brunt. Here's how we're going to split this. If it's 1,000, I get this, da-da-da-da-da. That's different than saying, Gabe, I have a gig. I need a first violinist. It's going to cost, I'll pay you $250. You're just going to do a gig, right? Like you're not explaining the entire business model of a quartet business to a sub player every single time.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, being transparent about the whole thing with your regular people. I think that's extremely important. If, it's somebody you call like maybe once or twice a year or something like that, you're just, telling them, what you're getting paid and where to show up. And that person probably isn't even interested in that.
Now, getting back to the business thing, you said the LLC, the bank account, that's important. You've got taxes that you're now worrying about, which means you might need to W-9 them.
Well, it depends on how much, if it's more than $600, you need to W-9 all of the people. And so you need to keep track of, who you're paying and how much you're paying them. So, that takes, an accounting program in order to make sure you stay organized that way. Really, in order to run any successful business, you've got to be organized. Your taxes are going to change. You really should pay quarterly taxes when you're doing something like this. That's how you don't, get, buzzed by the IRS. So it takes a whole lot of organization and know-how to be able to do this.
You also, I would assume, depending on the level, you need to figure out what the legal ramifications of this are. Do you get a contract before your quartet members? Hey, yesterday we were friends, but now I'm giving you a contract to play at my house because we're going to go. What's the balance there? We have one paying gig. Do I need to do all this, or no, we're going to make a run at it? Where's your gray area on business versus business casual?
Well, I mean, it goes into as well, not just contracts, but also insurance. And, if you want to make sure that, people don't try to take advantage of you, or, if somebody should get injured, what do you do there? And there are varying, levels of what people are comfortable with when they do that. I've signed liability waivers, for such things, and there are other people who just get insurance for that. The contract. I've played gigs where I've had to sign a contract at the gig because somebody insists on it, and other people just call me and tell me where to show up, and they hand me cash. And so it just depends on what level you're willing to get to.
Also into this business strategy conversation is the technology, right? Somebody's paying for the website. Somebody's paying for the internet for that website. I mean, the nice thing is that when you have an LLC, you get these nice deductions. Cell phones. Should you be putting your cell phone number, your personal cell phone number, out in the open saying, come and hire me, I have a string quartet?
Some people are absolutely fine with that. My best advice is to have a separate number. These days, you can have several numbers on one phone. It used to be you need to get another phone, but you don't even need that. You can get a separate phone, and obviously a different ringtone. It's like, oh, I know that's a wedding, and I better answer it right away.
This is where we got Google Voice, and Google Voice is a free service. You can have it lined up to your own 3-digit area code numbers and stuff like that.
Right.
I've been using Google Voice for all of my business stuff forever now, and it is a great way. You're right. It does click in differently. So somebody's got to take care of all of this stuff. And of course, lastly, here as we wrap up this section, somebody's going to be organized for the calendars, right? Are we going to be running, let's just say, a Google Calendar? You put it in, all of your people are there. Who's doing the emails? Who's going to make sure that the people are there where they need to? Vendors, clients, potential clients, marketing, making sure those musical selections are there. There's a lot of stuff that we have to think about with business strategy, Gabe. I'm sure we're going to be discussing this on future podcast episodes and future videos, but let's just kind of put a bow on business strategy. It ain't easy, is it?
No. And you want to make sure, again, the mantra that I always give is be organized. And if you are organized, you can turn this from a side gig into a completely successful business. We've had friends who, just started, doing this kind of for fun and actually turned it into a full-fledged living.
Yes.
Just doing weddings and organizing these weddings. And you could be playing one wedding somewhere, and there could be 5 other weddings that you organized and that you're getting paid for at the same time. It's kind of the definition in a sense of passive income, because you've done this work before, and other people are actually out there doing the weddings, and the money's coming into you in that sense. So you can take this as far as doing a full living just doing weddings, if you're organized.
That's a lot of pocket bills, Cannon.
Yes, it is.
Now, the last thing here and this is really the sustaining part, it's the customer service, right? It's being friendly, it's being professional. Let's just kind of break this down. Before the event happens, there's customer service, right? Somebody needs to find you. Your website needs to be inviting. And by find you, I mean, again, we talked about the SEO. We talked about making sure things are in the right spot. Does your website have a play button where you can listen to the different things? Talk to us a little bit about some of the bedside manners that you would need just to get some leads in. And, someone's going to call you and say, Gabe, do you have a string quartet? And how do you... What's the mousetrap that you use?
Well, it's a mousetrap, which first of all means that it instantly happens. So you want to make sure that you have your phone ready, and to be able to answer immediately, and to be able to answer emails quickly. And you answer it. And first of all, be personable. Understand that these people are hiring you to create magic on possibly the most important day of their lives.
Yep.
And so you want to make sure that you are at their disposal, and that, you, like you said before, constantly saying yes, and saying, yes, I can do that for you. Yes, we can figure this out. And making sure that their day is as special as you can possibly make it, as beautiful as you can possibly make it.
Ask them a ton of questions, right?
Yeah.
Just ask them. And I've always found, like, when you ask those questions, are you steering them towards the answers they want? Or are you steering them towards the answers you want? I mean, you could say, hey, we do a great version of Canon. And they're like, well, how about Cardi B? No. We have a great version of Canon.
Well, and,
right?
And it just kind of depends. I mean, sometimes, people want, a particular tune that you don't think is, particularly appropriate, but they'll insist on it. And you know what? You say yes, and you figure it out. Other times, you're able to steer them. Lots of people don't know, even the titles to some of these tunes. So, sometimes it takes a little bit of guesswork to, figure out exactly what it is they want. But it's their day.
Right.
You want to give them what they want.
Absolutely. Now, during the event, we always recommend, this is the obvious. You show up on time. And if the wedding starts at 3, on time is like 2:15.
Really early, and you want to make sure you're warmed up. You want to make sure you find a good spot. You want to make sure that you
have clothespins.
Clothespins. If you're not using iPads, you want to make sure you have batteries. If you're using iPads, you want to make sure you are in contact with the pastor so that you can coordinate. There's a host of things.
And that's a big one, right? That's a question that you need to know to ask. When we get there, who is my contact person?
Right.
Because it might be the pastor. I mean, we've had situations where we wanted to play a specific piece, and the religious figure says, no, you can't do that in our building. But
right.
That's what the bride wants. And you have to have that conversation. So are you dealing with the wedding planner? Are you dealing with the best man? Are you dealing with the religious person? Are you dealing with who's going to be there? But show up on time, be professional.
Yeah.
And, you want to make sure that you're able to use it as a commercial for the next time. So having a business card is there. You don't, you want to do it tastefully, right? You don't do it at the ceremony, but making sure that you are always there. What else can I do for you? How can we get you back? How do we make sure that, there's a very memorable experience? Because after all, your only business that you have is the word of mouth business.
Exactly. And if you're going to use this as an opportunity to put it on your YouTube channel and do it as a promotion, make sure you've got your good camera there and that you have a good angle. There's so many things to figure out. It's not just sitting down and playing string quartet music. There is a whole lot more to it.
Now, after the event, it's natural. You send a thank you note. Is the thank you note in the same email as the receipt?
I wouldn't put it there. Definitely a separate email, saying thank you. And, there are different ways of doing it, but you want to make sure that it's clear that, that first of all, that you get payment and that payment has been made. And at the same time, thank you for your business. We appreciate you recommending us to someone else.
Also, I like the idea of the referral program. Hey, it was great being with you. If you know somebody else who might be getting married, please let us know. 10% off, whatever the number is.
Exactly.
It might hurt to do a discount, but I'd rather get something and then let's discount it than nothing at all. And, we talk about mailing lists in the term of promoting ourselves to others, but have a list of the people that you've worked with. And if it is a wedding, start sending them emails in October, in November, in January, going, hey, do you know of anybody who might need our services? We're looking to book out for May, August, June, the wedding months here.
Right.
Always be thinking ahead. Everybody knows somebody who's getting married.
Right. It's one of the things that is always happening, which is why your business will continue to flourish, because people aren't going to stop getting married. You just need to get your name out there.
Right. And some people might be getting married, a fourth time. So the other thing that we just want to make sure is that you always have your eyes open for recruiting musicians. I mean, having, we call it having a stable, right? Making sure that you have enough people out there that if you do need to, switch in and out, it's always there. Gabe, we talked about musicians, music, marketing, business strategies, customer service. Is there anything that we missed?
There is always more to learn, especially when it comes to this sort of thing. Always things to tweak. You could have put it this way: the day a wedding gig that goes completely smoothly is extremely, extremely rare. So what you always want to do is keep on learning, keep on observing, keep on figuring out ways to do this better.
We would love to have your feedback and thoughts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts on this matter. And if you have any funny string quartet stories, we would love to hear from you guys. And of course, if you're listening to this audio, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite player, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anything like that. We are the Art of Listening podcast. You can find out more information over at gabrielgordon.net. And Gabe, I want to leave here with one piece of advice. If you're out there listening to this entire episode and you're like, all right, I'm looking to get started, or I've got this thing, I just don't know what that next step is. What's your biggest advice for anybody out there who's looking to really do this as we come out of the pandemic and start to kind of get closer to each other?
Yeah, I would say do your research, listen to this podcast, because we have a lot of the steps here that you need to do, and get organized. That's absolutely the most important thing. Figure out every step that you need to take in order to make this a successful business.
And so we hope that you certainly take a moment to do that and hit that subscribe button. Again, there's a lot of great episodes and stuff over on the Art of Listening podcast, and you can find out more information over at gabrielgordon.com. And that wraps up this episode. On behalf of Gabriel Gordon and myself, Jeff Bradbury, thank you so much for listening to us. Enjoy the music.